Candidates are starting to come out of the woodwork now. It's about time. And, of course, primaries will be held before you know it. I mean, it's going to be middle of the night. You're going to wake up and go, oh, yeah, today's primary day. So, who's running for governor? Because you've heard about who's running for U.S. House of Representatives, and a bunch of other candidates are about to come out of the woodwork. Sorry to say come out of the woodwork, Brent. I'm making you sound like a termite, aren't I? Brent Bien is on the phone with me right now. Sorry. Well, I don't want to make you sound like a bug or a slug or something like that. We met. You're a decent guy.
Yeah. That's okay, Glenn. No,
Okay.
I'm with you. I am coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a look at what woodwork you're coming out of. You're up in what, Cheyenne? Or I'm sorry, you're up in Sheridan.
I'm in Sheridan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So for background, when you and I sat down and had a talk a while ago, this is Brent Bien, and he is a candidate for governor of the state of Wyoming. But you have a long military background, don't you?
You know, I do, and it was such a privilege to serve this nation. I mean, we live in the greatest nation in the history of the world. I tell you what, if I was young again, I'd do it all over again. But you know, to me, my service hasn't ended. But and that's why I'm pursuing this candidacy for governor. But yeah, I was a Marine. I was a Marine officer, retired as a Marine Corps colonel here back in 2019. So it was just a fantastic opportunity, and it really was. So like I say, our country's just awesome.
Okay, since you've been back in Sheridan, Wyoming, I would assume has your military career come to an end then?
You know, it has.
Okay.
It has. So I went through the university. I'm originally a native of Wyoming. Went through the University of Wyoming Engineering College, and when I graduated, I was also commissioned as a Marine Corps officer. I went off and for nearly 3 decades, served in multiple combat contingency operations, whether it was Bosnia, mid-'90s, Kosovo, late '90s, and of course we all got our shares over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I retired toward the end of 2019. Now, I kept my residency the entire time. I've been a registered Republican ever since I was 18, and I voted in this state since, predominantly with via absentee. And then I moved back up to Sheridan. Sheridan's a little bit more mild, less wind than Laramie, where I'm originally from. So that's where I am right now. And then I took a job up here after retiring at Bighorn Airways as the Director of Safety and Standardization. And I resigned that job last fall specifically to run for governor, and that's where I am right now.
Okay, so what inspired you to resign from a job that I assumed you pretty much liked and go after the seat of governor?
Well, 2 primary reasons. One is to protect my personal freedom, and by default, the freedoms of everybody else in this state. And 2, to have the authority to say no to federal overreach. Okay, I tell you, Glenn, I have never, and I've been following state, national, and international events since I was a child, just because my parents were so keen on those kind of things, and I've kept that. I was a very conservative student, UW all the way through. But I tell you, I have never seen our nation in such a state of secular devolution. I mean, I cannot believe what's happening. Now, I think a lot of us who've been following this for such a long time have been saying, "Hey, it's coming, folks. It's coming. Open your eyes," because the average person across the nation spends roughly about 7 minutes or so in there on politics, and I don't blame them, quite frankly. But, the only good thing about Biden getting elected is that the veil came down. And for those of us who've been watching this and saying, hey, it's coming, folks, now a lot of the folks are actually seeing it. And it's not something that just happened overnight. It's something that's been creeping in for a long time, for generations, really. And also, I never would have imagined that the results of poor elected leadership would be so detrimental to the future of our state, our nation, and really the demoralization of the American spirit. And so it's very compelling. I see it, and serving and witnessing the end state of tyranny on so many occasions, it's not pretty. And looking into the eyes of those who've never known freedom and those who never will know freedom, and I see what's happening in our country with the encroachment on our freedoms, and I'm like, not here. Not in my America, and not in my Wyoming. So that's what leads me here today.
So it sounds like you want Wyoming to be a lot more independent than it's been in the past few years, more independent-minded and more separated from the federal government.
Well, I do. I tell you, I do. I think that, over decades, really, there's been so much intrusion by the federal government, and of course, we take a significant amount of federal funds here in this state, and so we're way too dependent upon federal funding and that federal overreach. And of course, anytime we get federal money, for the most part, there's always strings to it, and we're blessed in this state to where we generate so much energy that we shouldn't need all this federal funding. But I think a lot of that comes down to how poorly managed our budget has been, over the years. And that's why I'm such a proponent of cash-based / performance-based budgeting. We need to transition to that. We need to really take a look at our budget. We need to do redundancy analysis across the board. It seems like every time our legislature meets, they form a new board, a new committee, a new whatever it is, and of course, then the taxpayer's stuck with footing the bill for this in perpetuity. So we need to really look at that and figure out what's essential, what's not essential, and then inside of those, naturally, with the essential tasking, is start matching full-time employees, because that's, as you know, where all the money goes. But we have to do this, and as I project out both healthcare and education, which make up most of our budget. Over the next 5 or 6 years, I tell you, we're going to be insolvent unless we get our budget squared away, unless we, incorporate a state income tax. And Glenn, I will never do that on my watch. There's absolutely no reason to do that. We've got to get our fiscal house in order. And of course, that's coupled with our energy diversification. My goal is to make Wyoming the freest state in the nation, and we should be. I mean, just the sense of freedom you get when a person comes into the state is so overwhelming. But our policies don't match the perception. So we've really got to get in there, knuckle down, and say, okay, what's it take? Well, this is measured. This freedom variable or freedom is measured primarily on personal freedoms, on regulatory, and then on fiscal discipline. So my whole campaign is going straight after. I've got what I call my 3 Ps, and that's protecting personal freedoms, pursuing government accountability, and promoting state sovereignty. So all of this works together, and I know we can do this. I know we can get our house in order to do that. I know that we can become more self-reliant, and a lot of that's through deregulation. We should be building packing plants, just like Gene Forty was just up in Billings the other weekend, opening a brand new packing plant. It's like, why aren't we doing that here? Why are we not logging here?
Be great to get around federal regulations and get into things like building more refineries, too. Let me ask you, Brent,
exactly
Bien, Bien is his last name, Brent Bien.
Yeah.
People need to know more about you. This is sort of your introductory interview here. So for people to track you down, and by that I mean not just look at your website, but track you down, how do they find you? How do they get in touch with you? How do they find your website?
Well, I'm at BrentBien.com. And also, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Brent Bien. I just opened up Twitter, and that's because Elon Musk bought it, and that's Brent Bien 4Gov, and it's the number 4. And so that's what I'm doing right now.
All right.
And
we'll have you back as we get closer toward the primary time or just on the other side of it. Thanks for coming on, Brent. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Bien is how you spell his last name, Brent Bien. It's Wake Up Wyoming.